But here's where I want to land this practically speaking. While we are here today recording this content, pastors in this room have come under new conditions as a result of the spike in transmissions. We are going to go home this weekend, some of us, to the pressing need to reevaluate whether we're going to follow protocols. One of our sessions today was different than originally planned because one of our pastors is under quarantine. Like we are right now, present tense, dealing with the confusion and the new protocols associated with this second wave, whatever you think about it. So here's the question, very practical, and I know there are pastors looking in who want to hear from you. Within the next couple of weeks, it is entirely possible that churches again will be shut down and will be returned to some kind of lockdown status. That's already happened in Manitoba. In Toronto, churches have been reduced to a maximum of 50 people. Local health units are evaluating right now whether those extra regulations need to be applied in other places. If your church is shut down again in December and January, we're hearing about a vaccine that might be coming in February or March. If you're shut down in January and February, if your local health unit says no more meetings, how will you respond? What will you do?
I think our church will continue, unless my elders change their view, but our church will continue to seek to be compliant with what the government regulations are. However, at the same time, as the days pass, we are continuing to think about how we can flex a response to the government, engage with the government, different levels of government, because it's both municipal and provincial, and engage with them even to the point that I could foresee us, mounting a lawsuit, that sort of thing. So compliance while pushing back against some of the rationale of what's going on. Now, I think we assess that on a situation by situation basis as the regulations or restrictions are put in. But I think that's the posture, is to be able to submit to those things, but not be passive.
Right.
We have to express ourselves, and maybe that is, joining, talking to lawyers, getting involved, engaging with public officials, engaging with politicians, so that we've got a voice, so that we are offering a contrary position. If in fact then this seems to be then the blunt instrument applied to churches that may or may not be consistent, might be a foolish thing. Maybe it's a wise thing. It just depends on your perspective. But I think that's what we'll continue to do.
Okay.
That's where we're at.
Yeah.
So,
go ahead.
Well, if you had the last, I think that isn't in the Bible or Jordan Peterson that God sends the rain on the just or the unjust.
It's probably both.
And I think it's the Bible,
it's probably
right?
both.
Yeah. So from my point of view, if the restaurants are shut down and they shut the churches down, then I think we would just take that. If the restaurants and the yoga parlors and the yoga whatever and the gyms are open and the churches are shut down, then that would be a very different question. But I think we would just. But the second thing is, and I've been thinking.
So George, just to make sure people are understanding what you're saying if the protocols appear to be evenly and fairly and generally applied, you'll comply with them. If they appear to maliciously target the church, you might not.
Yeah, that would be a different thing.
Okay.
Whether if it's equally applied to places that I think we would just endure it. Mm-hmm. But I think the time is I've been resistant to do this. I think the time is come for Christians to bear a particular type of witness of asking questions. Mm-hmm. Because we can't claim that we have any special expertise to know the science of a mask, for instance. But we can start to ask the question in terms of challenging, it. Like, what about the poor? Right. Like, are these lockdowns, as I was sharing with somebody, it's estimated that 150 million people will die in the world from starvation because of lockdowns. Mm-hmm. So is that being counted? Like, we can start to bear witness of questions about the poor. and how it's been unequally, how it's affecting the lower income children and
Or
opportunities.
seniors, those in
or
nursing homes.
seniors. We can't. I think we need to start asking questions about why they only look at one variable. I think we need to start being the ones who can take we don't have broad shoulders. We ride on the shoulders of somebody who has broad shoulders. None of us have broad shoulders. We are miserable sinners. We are beggars telling other beggars where to get free bread. But I think it's time very soon for the churches to start to take the lead in asking particular questions. You can't follow the science because science doesn't tell you what the right direction is. Science can just tell you, A and B and C, and we can challenge the idolatry of the idea that not one person will die. It sounds as if Christians should applaud that, but that's an idolatrous statement.
Right.
It is not a Christian statement. It is an idolatrous statement to think that going back to techniques, so that we have the techniques to guarantee that no person will die. I think we need to start asking questions of the state but as long as it's equally, the shutdowns are equal, then I think we just have to, but we need to start I think we need to start actually bearing witness and not being silent, primarily by asking very pointed questions about what's actually driving things and not being afraid of being pushed back on.
Good. Winston?
Yeah, I would agree. If we have a shutdown coming, for instance, because our hospitals are being overwhelmed, I'm gladly going to comply. If the shutdown is applied equally across the board, then that's fine. If it's applied to churches and not to things like restaurants, then I think, I don't make the decisions for my church, but then I would be in favor of saying, well, no, then perhaps it's the time to have civil disobedience in that regard. And then just to add to your comment, George, the serious questions about how lockdowns affect the most vulnerable in our society and around the world, I 100% agree with you on that. And I think that the keeping local churches open addresses that. We know that people who attend churches, there's stats about how they live longer, and having churches open is good for the vulnerable in all regards. And so care for the vulnerable in society, which is one of those areas that's supposedly supposed to overlap, that you're talking about in your Venn diagram, means that I think we should be trying to keep churches open as much as possible.
Yeah, and this isn't the Bible, this is actually Reagan, but he's actually expressing a biblical idea. The best welfare program in the world is a job. Yeah. And if you do things pushing the economy into unemployment, it's almost always affecting the weak and the vulnerable the most.
I would just add as well, we are focused on the lockdowns, it's COVID, it's all these things. I think at the same time, the other thing we got to be stressing is keeping our eye on other issues.
Yeah.
And so, for example, am I correct? It's Bill C6, the conversion therapy ban. We already had a conversion therapy ban in Calgary. The way it's written, it is a serious threat to all of our religious liberty. Nobody's really talking about, because we're all talking about lockdowns and COVID. And it's the kind of thing that churches need to be thinking about and being prepared for, how to respond and speaking up and pushing back. And so there's things like that we're just don't even have in our viewfinder here, and yet COVID's taken it all up. So I think we've got to kind of take a step back and look around and see what's going on.
Yeah, good. Our approach will be much the same. Our approach thus far has been to use every inch of permission that we're given, and to be in compliance with the protocols, but not without questions. And so I would say, again, if they are applied evenly, if there's no apparent malice or specific targeting of the church, we would want to be good neighbors. We would want to do our part to help control the spread. I know it's a live issue, and I wanted to make sure that we had time for that. That is all the time that we have. I want to thank you, brothers, for giving so generously of your time and your expertise and your wisdom in pastoral ministry. I know that's appreciated. And I just wonder if, Clint, you could close our time in prayer.